Penguins got a weekend split against the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Columbus Blue Jackets, and Pat and I are going to break down those two games, plus get you all set for the Battle of Pennsylvania tonight, right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. You can follow him on all social media platforms at Send Him For Wet. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins, and you can follow the show's Instagram at LockedOn_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen / watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. I am back after I was out with my family on Black Friday doing a whole bunch of things. Pat, thank you for holding down the fort. I was trying to get home in time, but it just wasn't going to happen. My family made sure of that, honestly. But I'm back today, back in the host chair, and back after the Penguins got 2 out of 4 points against the Blue Jackets and the Maple Leafs. Overall, Pat, 4 out of 6 points this past week. I think, to me, that is a job well done. You wanted 5 out of 6, so a little bit below that, but they still go 2-1 this past week in games that they needed to have. And let's start with the game against Columbus, because through 2 periods, the Penguins were getting brutally outplayed, outclassed in every single way, shape, and form. And then Bryan Rust, who had been knocked out of the game not once but twice before the third period, comes back, gets the Penguins back in it, makes it a 3-2 game. And then Sidney Crosby with a vintage Sidney Crosby goal. I'm not sure why Jet Greaves allowed him to get the puck. I thought Greaves should have went out there and played it better, but that's a little bit of a rookie mistake from him, and Crosby made him pay. And then, Pat, the Penguins finally get their first 3-on-3 overtime win, thanks to Chris Letang. Great work in the corner from Evgeny Malkin in that 1-on-2 battle, the way that he was able to kick the puck out, and then Letang and Novak had that beautiful give and go. But those were 2 very crucial points for the Penguins on a night, Pat, where it didn't look like they were going to get any points with the way they were playing.
Yeah, it's interesting about the Columbus game, because you're right. For 2 periods, they did not play well. Their effort level wasn't great. Columbus took it to them, but then they woke up in the third period and they were able to battle their way back, get an overtime win. And it was a game that they won that they probably should not have won. So you can't get too upset at that. As I always say on this show, it's easier to do film study and try to improve after a win than after a loss. So
it also evens out, because they lost a Seattle game they should have won. So now you win a game you should have lost. So
right. And I also think you look at, and we'll talk about it in the next segment, it was the opposite on Saturday against Toronto. They didn't play bad against Toronto. In fact, I thought they played pretty well, but they just didn't get goaltending, and then they got goalied as well. So we'll talk about that later on. I also kind of want to go away from the game for a little bit for Friday against Columbus because of everything that Bryan Rust did. And Adam Gretz and I were discussing this on social media on Saturday morning. I understand the compulsion of wanting to fire or trade or let go of your Bryan Rusts, your Rickard Rakels, et cetera, to the highest bidder. Same thing goes for the big 3. I know the compulsion and the desire to want to burn it all down and start from scratch, because that's just what we think rebuilds are. But it is going to be a lot easier for your Ben Kindles, Tristan Bros, Rutger McGroarty, et cetera, to learn from guys like Bryan Rust, who set a culture like that. Because that would have been a real easy game for this team to go, we don't have it tonight, we're done, we got to play again tomorrow night against Toronto, we got to get on the bus or the plane or whatever and head back to Pittsburgh, this is a pain in the ass, let's just call it. And Bryan Rust clocked it and said, absolutely not. He worked his ass off, he battled his ass off, and he led this team back to a victory. And keeping the culture set at that is very necessary. and Bryan Rust being the guy to do it. It's not that Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Carlson won't teach these young guys a lot, but those four are players who are surefire Hall of Famers. They are guys who have led teams and been marketable superstars, and they were just touched by whatever divine being there is with unbelievable talent. Bryan Rust has had to work his ass off to get to where he is. And watching that guy go from late round pick to bottom six forward to penalty killer to top six forward to option on the power play to leader, a lot of these guys that they're going to bring in over the next few years, that's more than likely their path. So keeping a guy like him around and having him set the culture the way he does is going to really, really help this team's rebuild, and it helped them get 2 points against a division rival.
And you saw him really learn from the leaders when he was first coming up from Wilkes-Barre. Crosby, Malkin, Letang were still very much leaders. That's going to remain the case until they retire as members of the Penguins. And he was able to learn that winning culture. And now that he has experienced it for so long, now he is someone that can pass off his knowledge and his leadership to potentially some of these other younger players who are going to be learning from him and the other core players that are on this team. So I do think you have to think about that as well. And I agree with everything you said. And I know I have been harsh on Rust on this show this year just because it has felt like even though he has produced, he hasn't been playing that well, at least process-wise. But he brought the Penguins back into that game in the third period. Again, he was in and out of the game not once, but twice. Comes back, scores a huge goal to get them back into it before Crosby was able to tie it later on in the third period. But we have said time and time again, the way that he's been able to drag this team back into the fight over the last couple of seasons, even when they haven't been that good, especially last season. And in this game on Friday in Columbus, he did exactly that. So I can't say enough about his leadership still. Just a really great game from him overall, probably one of his best of the season. And that's saying something just because, again, process-wise, it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows for him. You know, you and I have been on the show, have talked about that. And also, when it comes to the culture, losers breed losers. So it's good to have someone like this around. I know a lot of people were upset that they didn't trade him this past offseason just because of the season that he had, the value that he had at the time. But look at the culture that this is going to create once you get more of these younger players up here. You don't want to become, you know, even before this year, Chicago, or before this year, like Anaheim, where it takes a long time to get back to being good. Even San Jose, I know they're being better, but it still takes a long time to get back to being good. You want to have that culture in place so the young players can really learn from it. So I agree with you on that. But again, it was just really nice to see this team rally in the third. They had nothing going into that period, and they were able to steal 2 points away from a team that has been very vulnerable as of late. I loved that overtime goal because Chris Letang, there were sequences in this game again, Pat, where he wasn't that good. But you know what? He stepped up when it was needed, and he got the Penguins that big extra point in overtime. I also loved the play of Tommy Novak. Let's discuss that before we get to our second segment. I thought this was arguably his best game of the season. He was engaged all night, set up not just Crosby's goal, but Letang's game winner. He was all over the ice in all three zones, especially though in the offensive zone. He was very engaged. That's the type of performance I want to see more from when it comes to Novak. Honestly, even before that game on Wednesday against Buffalo, I also thought he was much better as well. So he's starting to string together a couple of really good performances.
And the process is finally leading to production.
Yes.
He finally got some help from the guys he's setting up because, again, I said it on the show earlier, you like a lot of what the process is, but the process only goes so far. It eventually has to lead to something, and it's finally leading to something. It was a very smart decision on his part in overtime to dish it back to Letang because everybody sold out who in front of him, Jet Greaves and the defenseman, thinking Novak was going to shoot. He recognizes that, dishes it back to Letang. Letang basically has the entire net to shoot at, and we call game on that. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention, and again, we're going to talk about more about this in the second segment. That was a great game by Jarry on Friday.
Yes.
You can look at the 3 goals against and say that's not great, but the way Columbus played, the way Columbus pressed the first 2 periods, it could have been a lot more than 3. So Jarry being able to hold the fort, keep this team in it, and give them a chance to come back in the 3rd period and force overtime, that is worth mentioning. And obviously, we're going to get into it here in a minute, kind of went the opposite way on Saturday against Toronto, but we're not talking about Toronto yet. We're talking about the Columbus game, and he put up a pretty solid performance.
Right. And I think he deserves to start tonight in Philadelphia if he is the first goalie off in the morning skate. We're recording this at about 11:40 a.m. on Monday. The Penguins start their morning skate at 11:30. So I'm sure potentially during this, we might get confirmation about who the first goalie off is. But in my opinion, Pat, should be Tristan Jarry. I think he deserves to start. I think you may even say he could deserve a little bit more of a runway here because Shelovs has not been playing well his last couple of starts. And speaking of that, Pat, we are going to discuss Artur Shelovs and the rest of that effort in quotation marks against the Toronto Maple Leafs right after this. But before we get to that, we have to tell you all about our first sponsor, which is Drip Drop. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, energy, mood, even my skin. That's why I've been using Drip Drop. It's doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. Drip Drop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. I like using Drip Drop as part of my daily routine. I'll mix a packet in the morning before the gym or during that midday slump. And honestly, it tastes amazing. My go-to flavor is apple, and it's become my secret weapon for staying sharp and energized through long days. Hydration has become non-negotiable for me. Drip Drop helps me feel sharper, calmer, and honestly, just better overall. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That is dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard and keep your body and mind performing at their best with Drip Drop. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. And Pat, I was liking the Penguins' effort for a good chunk of this game, especially in the first 7 to 8 minutes where they were brutally outplaying the Maple Leafs. But in goal, you could tell right away that Shelovs was not on his game. He was flopping around like a fish in his crease. His movement was awful, wasn't seeing the puck very well. He was completely out to lunch. And that's now 2 starts in a row where that has happened. He has not been good. You look at his save percentage in both of those starts, Pat, the Minnesota game and the Toronto game, 600 in both games. And he's been pulled in both of those games. He has not played well. I'm not trying to fully overreact because I want to see if this is a bad trend. It's 2 bad games, but I want to see if it turns into a trend because before then, I felt like he was having a pretty sound season for the Penguins. But right now, Pat, he has given up 8 goals on his last 19 shots. It is simply not good enough. He's been really bad since coming back from Sweden, and he needs to find his confidence, or they could potentially replace him in this tandem and maybe bring up Murashov at some point later on this year, or maybe even Yoel Blomqvist, for example. He needs to get back to the game that we saw him play at for most of the season before these last 2 starts, or again, something like that will happen. So we have to start with this game. Artur Shelovs was flat out awful once again.
It's not going to be a satisfying answer or a satisfying analysis to just blame it on the goaltender, but that's kind of where this begins and ends against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, you look at the stats of the game, they outshoot them 35-25. Dennis Hildeby played a pretty good game. He made a lot of good saves. He made a lot of saves on shots that looked ticketed for the net. So you have to give him credit. And then on the other side of it, Artur Shelovs wasn't good at all. And then Tristan Jarry, about 24 hours removed from a pretty good effort against Columbus, has to go in and clean up, and he just doesn't have the energy to do it. And that's kind of the story of the whole game. The thing that worries me about Shelovs is this. You can kind of see it in the way he's playing right now, in that he's fighting it. We had stretches last year where everybody wanted us to turn the microphones on and absolutely fillet Tristan Jarry. And there were games like last night, or like against Toronto, where yes, it was Tristan Jarry was the problem. But there were games where everybody in front of him just no-showed and he didn't have a lot of help. This wasn't that with Artur Shilovs. They played pretty well in front of him. There were a couple bad bounces. The D zone wasn't tremendous, but there were a good few goals where you look at it and go, come on, man, you got to make a save there. And you look at the rest of the Penguins' effort. They, especially the first half of the first period, they're the better team. They outplayed the Maple Leafs pretty badly. And when you can't get a save, I remember saying this, funny enough, about an early season game last year against Columbus, where the team was battling. They were working hard. They were right in it. And Jarry, when they were on the comeback trail, let up an absolute softie. And you just saw the body language of the team go, what do we even do with this? How do we count? We can't counter this. If we can't get a save, we're not going to win. And you could see that to a certain extent on Saturday against Toronto. The team's body language just went, we're not getting saves tonight, so this one might not be our night.
Right. And you were texting me about that during the game where it almost was like, well, we're not going to get some saves, so I guess we're going to, I don't know if mail it in, Pat, is the right term for this, but I think the players could tell, yeah, I don't think we're going to be getting saves from our starting goaltender tonight. So, and you saw the rest of what happened. I don't think the coverage in the D zone was that good, but I still felt like Shilov should have made some of those saves. And you saw the Penguins got right back into the game in that first period after giving up the first goal. Ben Kindle with a little bit of a baseball type swing on that deflection. That was awesome. Gets the Penguins right back in it. But then about a few minutes later, Shilovs gives up a howler, then gives up another goal, then another goal. And it's just like, okay, well, it snowballed from there. And by that point, when you were down by 3 goals and Tristan Jarry had to come into the game, like, it was over by that point. Honestly, Pat, they probably should have pulled Shilovs before it got to that point. Like, you could kind of tell by the second goal that he didn't have it. And
it would not have been the worst idea to start the second period with Tristan Jarry.
I agree.
And if you're Dan Muse, you can walk into the locker room and do that and just say to Shilovs, hey, listen, ain't your night, kid. Like, that's going to happen in the NHL. Doesn't mean we're mad at you. Doesn't mean we're suddenly thinking about sending you down, but we can just tell you don't have it tonight. Get your head on straight. Jarry, you got the rest of the way. And if it goes the same way, second half of a back-to-back, still, it probably would have been best to send Jarry out to start the second and see what happens. I give Muse credit for giving a young goaltender in Shilovs the chance to work through it, but with how precious points are right now, especially in the Eastern Conference, you kind of have to put that aside and say, listen, we got to find another way to have them figure it out. It can't be in game when points are so precious right now.
Right. And especially with the way that Jarry has played this year, and you and I have given him a lot of credit on this show for the way that he has played. I think at that point, even though he played the night before, you got to be like, hey, Shilovs, it's not your night. We're going to put Jarry in, even though he played last night, because we're in the playoff race right now. We won 2 in a row heading into this game. We need to get points because we know December is going to be hell on earth. And Pat, you and I have been talking about that for the last couple of weeks, and starting tonight against the Flyers. More on that in a second. But I just felt like they pulled Shilovs a little too late. It felt like it should have been after the first period, where you could tell that he just didn't have it. But do you have anything else to add about this game?
Big night for Sid.
Yes.
Crosby is, if you are looking at this upcoming homestand here that starts next week after this little 3-game swing they got against the Flyers, the Lightning, and the Stars, you might get to see some history, because he is getting really close to tying and passing Mario Lemieux for the franchise lead in points. So if you're looking at the next couple weeks and thinking about going to a game, might pull that trigger here pretty soon, because it could be a historic night at PPG Paints Arena. And I will just say, other than the goal, I liked his game a lot in both the Columbus and Leafs games. I think that we're entering that part of the season where Crosby realizes it's really starting to matter. and he really starts locking in and really starts putting up some big performances. So that could be a big part of getting through what's going to be a really hectic December for this team.
Yeah, and right now, Pat, you look points-wise, 9 away from tying Mario Lemieux for the franchise record in points, and then 10 away from passing him. So this is going to happen really soon, definitely in the month of December, if you ask me. And then also, he is now 15th on the NHL's all-time goal list with 641. Pat needs 59 more to reach 700. If he does, he'll be 9th in NHL history in all-time goal scoring, and I think he is going to hit 700 by the end of his career. You heard it here first on the Locked On Penguins podcast. But that's going to do it for this second segment. Coming up to end the show, Penguins have a big matchup tonight in Philadelphia against the Flyers, and they got a couple reinforcements from Wilkes-Barre on the way. Pat and I are going to discuss that right after this. But before we get to that, we have to tell you all about our final sponsor, which is FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you are reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place live bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight reel moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player prop update as guys heat up. You can also bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and so much more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. And speaking of that, you can bet on the Steelers-Ravens game this upcoming Sunday after the Steelers embarrassed themselves yet again against the Bills this past Sunday. The two teams, the Steelers and the Ravens, are tied atop the AFC North. So if you want to bet on who wins, you can do some player props. You can do that on FanDuel. So again, if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. That's FanDuel. The game moves fast, and so can you. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Pat Stamp. And Pat, Penguins Flyers comes your way tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern time in Philadelphia. And yes, people, it is another NHL Network game. I have been getting a lot of complaints from some listeners and some of my friends that a lot of these games are on NHL Network, and I understand your frustration. I don't have to deal with that here in Pittsburgh because I can just watch the games on Sportsnet Pittsburgh, but I understand the people that are upset because they don't get NHL Network and all of that stuff. But Pat, we do have some news to discuss because Penguins made not one, but 2 call-ups from Wilkes-Barre after sending Tristan Jarry and Danton Heinen down on Sunday. They recalled Rutger McGroarty and Boko Imama on Monday. And I'll say this for McGroarty. I still felt like it was going to be around the 10 to 15-ish game mark, but I kind of feel like some of the forward situations here kind of forced the Penguins' hand just because there have been too many passengers in the lineup. You know, someone like Joona Koppanen, he's not doing much. Danton Heinen hasn't been doing that much. And I think when you see the lineup that it is right now, even with the injuries, I think the decision makers, the coaching staff and the management staff were like, okay, I know it's only been 5 games. In a perfect world, we probably like to get McGroarty 5 to 7-ish more games down there in Wilkes-Barre, but we kind of have no choice and we got to call him up. 4 goals, 7 points in 5 games. There is a pretty decent chance that he does not go back down for the rest of the season just because of the way that he was dominating in Wilkes-Barre. You saw last week, one of his goals, it was breathtaking. The way that he went right around the Providence Bruins defender shorthanded. His skating looks even better than it was at the end of last season, which is saying something. He is blowing these shots right past the AHL goaltenders. These goalies don't even stand a chance with the way he's playing. And I'll say this for Boko Imama, man. His penalty shot goal last week was gorgeous. That was a hell of a goal. He continues to forecheck well down there in Wilkes-Barre. And it really feels like this game tonight, Pat, especially made for him with the physicality he can bring, the snarl he can bring. He is an upgrade over Joona Koppanen, who really wasn't doing much. And I think, Pat, they saw what happened in that last matchup in Philly, and they want Imama there, especially for that. But even outside of the snarl and the physicality, I think even if it's just for a couple of games before some of the injured players start coming back, he's an upgrade over Joona Koppanen.
Oh, agreed. I had, I don't want to say high hopes for Kopanen, but I thought he would be better than he was. And like you hit the nail on the head with the descriptor. He was just a passenger. He was a lot of busy nothing in the lineup. And with the way the season has gone so far, with the way the Eastern Conference is shaping up, we don't have time for busy nothing this year. We need more. And you're right. This is going to be a physical game. We saw the way the last one went. The rivalry, at least for now, is back on. And Imama, he's got a little bit of history playing against the Flyers. Last year threw a pretty big hit, and it led to quite a bit of extracurriculars against the Flyers. So this is no stranger to him. They are no stranger to him. And with the Jarry still out, you need, I hate to say it, but it's just the way the NHL is trending back again. You're going to need that physical presence in a game like this. As for McGroarty, I was with you. I thought it was going to be a little bit longer, but let's call it for what it is. He was playing the game on easy mode in the AHL. And it's very much all right, we've seen what we need to see. You've done what you need to do. We don't need to do this any longer. And the Penguins need the help. And Hunter, according to multiple reports, you're going to get your wish tonight. Because we're getting at morning skate, the third line is an all kids line. Ben Kindle centers, Ville Koivunen, and Rutger McGroarty. If I'm Dan Muse, I'm treating that line almost like a top 6 line. I'm obviously going to give the Crosby and Malkin lines more time, but I'm throwing them out right after. I'm throwing them out in all situations. You know what? You guys are the future of this team. Go show us you're the future of this team and do it against a rival.
I have been beating that drum for the last couple of weeks that when McGroarty comes up, I want him to get some time with Ben Kindle because I think they could have chemistry. And I want Ville Koivunen down there because I really think this could get him going a little bit more as well as he continues to search for his first NHL goal. Patty had a couple of good chances against Columbus. We didn't even bring that up earlier in the show where two golden chances were blocked. And it's just like, he looks to the heavens like, when is this ever going to break? But I think there's a better chance now that he is on a line with both Ben Kindle and Rutger McGroarty. This is the kids line I've been wanting to see. I also felt like there was a chance that they were going to put McGroarty up with Sid and Rust just because Kevin Hayes, we all know how Kevin Hayes is at this stage of his career. Not a top line player. I thought they were going to maybe move him down a bit further in the lineup, but I guess they're maybe just waiting for someone like Raquel to come back later this month and then Justin Brazeau as well. But I am stoked for this kids line. I think this line can do quite a bit of damage, and I think Kindle's going to have a lot of fun playing with McGroarty and Koivunen. As for the rest of the lineup, Pat, that you are expected to see, Kevin Hayes with Crosby and Rust, Tommy Novak with Evgeny Malkin and Anthony Mantha, as we just talked about the kids line, and then Connor Dewar with Blake Lizotte and Boko Imama. So it does look like Joona Kopanen is coming out. No surprise there, as we just talked about. Boko Imama will be on the fourth line with Dewar and Lizotte. I like that Dewar and Lizotte are reunited. I think they are both really good together on the fourth line. And Imama, with his snarl, his physical presence, with his forechecking ability, he's been a really good forechecker in Wilkes-Barre this year as well, even outside of that beautiful penalty shot goal that he recently had. I think this fourth line could potentially cook a little bit tonight, but we'll see. But I like it a lot more with Imama on it than Kopanen. And then defensively, Wotherspoon and Carlson, Shea Letang, and then Graves with Clifton. So Dumba's going to come out, and then Clifton is going to come back in. Just kind of rearranging deck chairs on that bottom pairing until they figure out what they want to do with Harris and Brunick. Ryan Graves was not good this past weekend. Pat, there was one sequence in the Toronto game, we didn't even bring this up, where he had a play to make below the goal line, and it was a time for him to be physical. He just didn't do it, and it led to a goal against. It's like, dude, you use your size a little bit in like 2 games when you came back up. And then since then, it's just back to what we've seen for the rest of your Penguins tenure. So, he is what he is. It's not going to get any better. And then Clifton and Dumba, again, you're just rearranging deck chairs at this point. Like they're nothing special. They're trying to figure this out until they decide what to do with Brunick. But the bottom pair is still going to be a tire fire for a little bit.
For sure. And this is, let's not undersell it here. This is a huge game tonight against the Flyers. They are 1 point up on the Penguins for the first wild card spot. The Penguins can tie the Capitals for third in the Metro with a win. The Flyers could take sole possession of third in the Metro with a win and tie for second if they get the win. And the Flyers, they have been rolling lately, man. They're on a 3-game winning streak right now. They've beaten the Devils, the Islanders, and the Florida Panthers, and they've won 5 of their last 7. And they have not, outside of St. Louis, beaten any real slouches. Like Devils twice, the Panthers, I know they're not the Panthers we're used to, but it's still a good team. The Islanders have been a surprise this year, and they're getting it from up and down the lineup. They may not have a true game breaker in their lineup. They may not have a true top talent because they're still waiting on a couple people like Mishkov to get it together, but
he's going to get going. It's going to happen very soon.
This is a team that's coming in hot, and it looks like it's going to be Dan Vladar in net for the Flyers tonight. He has been good this year, 10-4-1, 2.43 goals against, 912 save percentage. Penguins are going to have their work cut out for them tonight, and it is a big one.
Right. Vladar has been fantastic. Trevor Zegras has also been great for the Flyers. 9 goals, 24 points in 24 games. We all know how much of a rat he is, especially when you go back to that last matchup. He's going to do that stuff again, but he's also been great offensively for the Flyers. So you always have to know wherever he is on the ice. Konechny is close to a point per game. Only 5 goals in 24 games, but has 19 points. Owen Tippett has also been really sound this year for the Flyers. Christian Dvorak is having a fine year. Couturier, I feel like he's still going to get a little bit more going. Only has 4 goals, but still has 15 points. And as I said for Michkov, he is going to get going fairly soon. So always have to watch out for him as well. Rutger's doing a pretty good job so far. Penguins right now, Pat, as you said, you look at the standings, they are 2 points back of the Flyers. Both teams, have played 24 games. So if the Penguins can take 2 clean points, they will tie the Flyers for that first wild card spot, and they will be 1 point back of the Capitals. And the Capitals right now have 2 more games played than the Penguins. So Penguins have some games in hand on some of these teams, especially Carolina, New Jersey, and Washington. So you got to use those to your advantage, and you need to bank these points because December, as we know, is going to be really difficult. I don't think there's been any announcement as to who the first goalie off is yet from the morning skate, at least not that what I'm seeing right now on Twitter. So we'll have to see. My educated guess right now, though, is it's going to be Tristan Jarry. That's who I would start tonight, but we'll have to see who the first goalie off is and who Dan Muse announces. But Pat, I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. Pat and I will be back with a fresh episode for you all on Tuesday, recapping this game against the Flyers and getting you all set for the rest of the week ahead, especially with this crazy road trip that they have with 2 more bona fide contenders that they will be going up against. But for Patrick Damp, I am Hunter Hodes. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. We'll be back on Tuesday.